Hi everyone, how's everyone doing? Good. We good? Thank you. I understand that if some of you English isn't your first language, I will try and be as clear as possible, because even other people who speak English don't understand me sometimes. But at least you understood that. My name is Bob. My official name is Martin, but I go by the name Bob, so you can call me Bob. And I've been vegan for nearly 4 years now. I'm a vegan dad with 3 vegan kids. I might stand up here. 3 vegan kids. And yeah, as a dad, I found that the most effective and practical ways for me to spread the vegan message has been on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is called Vegan Geezer. But I also am fortunate enough to be in an opportunity where I can go into schools in the UK and I speak to kids about veganism. I spoke to 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 13, 14. I've got a university next week, some 15-year-olds a week after. I've got quite a few coming up. So it's really good that I can get out and do that. And, you know, I'm only away from my family for a few hours. So what I tend to do, I go and speak at a lot of festivals in the UK. I've spoken at about 20 events this year because I like to speak to vegans to try and empower and try and encourage a sense of community. And what I'm going to be talking about today is what I've noticed with regards to the progression of the vegan community and the vegan movement. Now, I'm not saying that everything I say is correct. It's just my opinion, what I've noticed. It's my perspective. Everyone has a different perspective. But ultimately, my aim today is to inspire the most positive progression of the vegan movement. So a lot of the stuff I'm going to share with you today is going to be based on what's been happening in the UK with regards to statistics. Let's get that out. So this first one in particular. Number of vegans in Britain rises by 360% in the last 10 years. Now, this was something that came out from the Vegan Society in the UK at the beginning of, or the end of last year. And they're saying that there are 542,000 vegans in the UK. However, the amount of times I've done this talk, when I've asked people if they took the survey or they know anyone that took the survey, hardly anyone raises their hands. So for me, the statistics don't really represent how much veganism has grown. I think in the UK alone, there's well over 1 million. I mean, when you look at the progress that's been happening around the world, in the UK, for example, we've got vegan restaurants popping up everywhere. And they will be completely oversubscribed, really busy, and we even have lots of mainstream restaurants which aren't vegan that are doing vegan options or even vegan menus. We're also seeing festivals and events happening every single weekend in the UK in all sorts of areas. You've got one, sometimes 2, 3 or 4 on one day. That's how popular it has become. Beyond this, though, we're also seeing a lot of successful campaigns. Some of these you may know about from where you are in the world. We had the Veganuary campaign. For those of you who don't know Veganuary, it's a strategic campaign to get people to try veganism for January in the hope that that month will inspire them to continue it. And it has a high success rate. I think they had 68% last year of people that did it actually carried on. And they had a campaign, a poster campaign at the beginning of last year. They had over 2,000 posters on the London Underground. It's the main transport network there. And then Peter, they changed one station, all of their posters to posters about veganism. And then we had a campaign called Go Vegan World. Now, these are very direct and provocative posters on buses, bus stops, and on big billboards, even on the toilet doors now of pubs. So the fact for me that these campaigns are allowed out in the mainstream is a huge step in the right direction. The fact that people are accepting this around the UK and even around the world, I've seen many similar things in other countries as well. It's a real positive step. And even in my everyday life, I've noticed lots of changes in the last few years. I remember there was a time when you would say to someone, I'm vegan, and they would go, do you eat fish? And you'd be like, no. And then they'd go, what about cheese then? No. But now it seems that people go, oh, vegan, vegan. It's like they know what it is. They're not 100% loving it, but they understand what it is, and that recognition is a real positive step. And we're seeing more and more people who are embracing veganism all over the world, and with this you're seeing more activism, more demos, more protests being largely attended. We had the first ever animal rights march in the UK last year. And we had the second one this year. The first year had about 2,000 people. This year it had 5,000. So it just goes to show how much it's increasing. And it's a real positive day. Also, we're seeing things emerge all over the world, but in the UK this has grown exponentially. the Save movement. This is a new kind of activism in the UK. And for those of you that don't know this will involve a group of individuals going outside of a slaughterhouse, showing with placards of information and protests, showing an opposition to what goes on inside. And I've been to a few of these, and they do not tell you what goes on inside. They don't have any signs up. So the fact that we are creating this awareness and letting the public know what goes on in there is extremely beneficial. Beyond that, though, people will then document the trucks coming in, they will film them, they will share that on social media. So in a way, this has brought a new dynamic to how we spread the truth about animal exploitation. We're able to show part of the process which we weren't able to show before. Now, if you want to really know what this is about, there is the first ever vigil on Monday, is that correct, in Vienna. Go over to the Save Movement stand to find out more information after this talk. They'll be able to give you lots of information. I'd recommend going there. It's important to make that connection, bear witness to what is actually happening there and see what's happening to the individuals. It really changes how we are spreading this message. But with more and more vegans, I'm noticing as well our attitudes and confidence is changing. I remember there was a time, especially in England, where the community was so small that maybe we felt a bit more isolated and we didn't feel as confident to speak to people. But now we're bigger, and there's more of us, it seems that veganism is affirmed, and therefore people will feel more confident to question others or speak out about veganism or about animal exploitation. And I feel that this newfound confidence, when directed in the right way, can have the most beneficial effects. It could be really good. However, if not focused in the right way, it can maybe be detrimental to veganism. Let me stress, though, any negative behaviour in how we communicate veganism, I feel only represents a small percentage of the general community. However, when people have been conditioned to believe that veganism is wrong, extreme, unhealthy, and not meant for us, then if you give them any sort of negative behaviour with that, they tend to just focus on the negativity and not really listen to you. And it's probably why that despite all of the progress, people still see vegans with the same, they always have. We have the same words that vegans are extreme, arrogant, moody, militant. But this doesn't truly represent us, I feel. It doesn't really say what we're about and why we do this. And a question would be then, why would we ever be negative? Why would we ever be negative when ultimately our goal is to inspire people to become vegan? Now, to really understand this, I think you have to look at the complex process we go through when we go vegan. So let's take a typical journey into veganism. Many of us will come across a video or some information which shows some graphic footage about animal exploitation, and it will be quite shocking to us. It will wake us up. It's hard to come to terms with the fact that not only has this been going on all around us, but that we've been contributing to it. And we know how that feels. It's a horrible realization. You feel lost. You feel worried. You feel upset. And you have all of these mix of emotions which tend to come out in one common reaction: anger. Now, this is my son, Jojo. He's 6 years old. He's not really angry. And for anyone who's seen him on my channel, they will know that he's your typical kid. He's silly, he's fun, he's kind. He pretty much represents that natural human compassion that we all have. We were all like that as kids. Pretty much every child in this world is born with that natural compassion. So the reason I've introduced Jojo is because I'm going to tell you a story about him, about something he did that taught me about why we sometimes react the way we do. So one day I'm editing a video, and Jojo comes over, and he sees some of the screen of what I'm editing, and it's this image: a man with his hand in front of a truck. And he says to me, "Daddy, what's he doing?" So I always tell him the truth. I don't have to show him what's going on, any graphic footage. I just tell him as much as I can to match his understanding of the world. So I say, well, there's this truck coming in, carrying lots of pigs, and they want to take the pigs into this place, and they want to kill them and chop up their bodies because people want to pay them to eat part of their bodies. And this man wants to stop that from happening. And so Jojo took a moment to understand this and really get it into his head. And then he came back and said, I think we should stop the truck, take the pigs out of the truck, take the driver out of the truck, and smash that truck up. And I was like, whoa, Jojo. Because as parents, we've always encouraged him to be tolerant and understanding of other people's lifestyles and that everyone is different. So we were quite surprised, but we took a second to evaluate this and think, if our innocent son is reacting this way, and he represents that natural human compassion, that natural childhood innocence, if he's reacting this way, then maybe it is a natural reaction for all of us. And I think, well, why would it be natural? Because when you consider that this is happening all around the world with in horrible ways, in huge numbers, with seemingly no end in sight, and that people will try and convince us that this is natural, that despite what people will make us believe, this is not natural. This should not exist in our reality. And because it shouldn't exist in our reality, we are not designed with any sort of coping mechanism with how to deal with it. We're not. There's no human manual of how to get past this. If you think of when you lose a friend or a family member and they die, it's a horrible feeling. And the only thing that ever seems to make that feel better, if anything, is time, the distance from when that originally happened. When they say time is the healer. Because this is happening so frequently, and we don't know when it's going to end, it's hard to get your head past this. It's hard to deal with this. So, of course, we act out in ways of frustration and anger. These are our self-designed coping mechanisms. And it's okay to act that way. It's okay to feel that way. It's natural. No one is helping us through this process. This is something we are dealing with ourselves. So then what tends to happen when we're fueled up this way and we're feeling this way? The logical process tends to be to focus all of that energy towards those we deem responsible. And we see those that are still consuming animal products responsible. So therefore we tend to focus all of our anger towards them. So before we do that though, I feel we have to understand why people consume animal products. What is their thought process? Why do they do it? What's their reasoning? So let's take a few typical people who still consume animal products, or typical non-vegans. So this is me and my wife, 6 months before we went vegan. And I can tell you now, there is not much difference between that guy there and the one you're looking at here. You know what? I might hold 2 bouquets now. That's the only difference. So I know what it is like to be a non-vegan. I know what it's like to live that lifestyle. So hands up, who here used to consume animal products before going vegan? Cool. I'd be worried if it was the other way around. So you all know what it is like to be that person too, to consume animal products. So you have to ask yourself, can you find that non-vegan you in every other non-vegan out there? That pre-vegan you. And ask yourself, why did you do it? Did you do it because you were just unaware, uneducated, apathetic, blissfully ignorant? Most importantly though, did you do it and did they do it because you thought it was healthy, right, what we needed, and normal, and harmless? A good way of really understanding the mentality of those that can still consume animal products, I think, is looking at the responses they have to vegans. So, nice quiz for everyone. What is the number one food, I hope it's like this around the world, I'm pretty sure it is. What is the number one food that non-vegans say to vegans to make them angry? Bacon, yes, we get bacon. Oh, what about some bacon? You sometimes just get the word bacon as a response to veganism. Next question. What is the number one nutritional deficiency that apparently we all have? Protein. Yes, where do you get your protein? What about protein? From people who have no idea what protein is. And then you get stuff like plants have feelings and all of these arguments. But when you really analyze this and you realize that this is happening from people of all ages, from all around the world, different walks of life, different backgrounds, different cultures, then you have to recognize that these responses are inherent from conditioning and brainwashing for years and years for our societies. These aren't constructive responses. We know that when we weren't vegan, we weren't taught about why you can't be vegan, the nutritional deficiencies, what food you'll miss out on. We were never taught any of that. We were just given the meat for protein, milk for calcium, again and again from adverts and industries. So we have to recognize that these responses are really just from victims of conditioning. We all had that number done on us, not only to be in a position that we would consume animal products and pay for suffering and harm, which we don't believe in, but we actually defend the industries as well. We actually speak out on their behalf and say, no, you need bacon. And so what I feel we have to look at this as, I like the comparison of, if you think about when there is a war in a country. Now, when a country goes to war, most people I know, regardless of the country, will condemn the actions of war. And we will always recognize who's to blame. We never blame the people with the guns. We never blame those with the tanks or flying the planes. We recognize it is an authority, a government, or a leader of the country who is responsible. So we target towards them. But with regards to animal exploitation, there isn't this one person, the head of animal products industries, to blame. We do recognize it is the consumers who are the ones to change. But we have to then look at, what does it do to them if we are condemning them for doing something which they perceive as normal and they don't see it as harmful, just like we used to? What does it do? I mean, how does it feel to be condemned? It doesn't feel nice, does it? No one likes being condemned. For some people, just knowing that you're vegan is hard enough. You can say, oh, yeah, I'm vegan, and they go, I love animals, I buy free range, I'm a good person. It automatically calls them out. So adding on top things like, you're a murderer, and you pay for this, and you're destroying the planet, it tends to just send them into a self-defense mode, where all they are concerned with is how they've been made to feel, that guilt. And they want to get away from that. They don't listen to you, they tend to disengage, and they make it more about how you've made them feel. They almost have this concern like they're a victim. We don't want them to see themselves as a victim. We want them to be aware of how their choices affect other victims. So many people would say then, is there one form of activism which is the best? I don't have the answer for that. There are numerous ones. You've got more direct ones, which people will get your message there and then. You've got the more everyday, subtle ones, which you can do without much effort, but again, it can plant a seed, put a message out there. And then you've got the more remote and online ones. Again, you can do these every day, but they can be quite direct just over the internet. But there are different factors on what can be really effective with activism. One can be how good you are at something, if you've got a certain skill or not. It can also be about the people that you're speaking to. How do they respond? Are they into the environment? Are they into their health? Are they just big animal lovers? But the biggest thing for me is with the attitude with which we communicate. Now, I'm going to get to that shortly, but one thing I want to talk about as well, which I've noticed a lot in England and in other areas on the world via online, is all of this passion and determination we have, and perhaps frustration, is sometimes targeted towards each other. I actually hear vegans saying to other vegans, you shouldn't be doing that, you should be doing this. Or your activism isn't good enough, mine is, stuff like that. And I can't help feel that that's counterproductive. And also as well, we have to consider that everyone has different strengths in different areas. And just because one thing works for one person doesn't mean it will work for another. I'll give you an example. Here's a friend of mine called Paul. He's on YouTube as Hench Herbivore. Some of you may recognize him. He's a bodybuilder, a personal trainer, a qualified nutritionist, and obviously a vegan. He's been vegan for 5 years. And what he does in his work, he has people come in, his clients, he trains them, and he does a 2-week vegan challenge with them. And he's seen a lot of success with this. They will go away and continue to be vegan. So if he came to me one day and said, Bob, stop the talking in schools, YouTube, you want to be a personal trainer, a bodybuilder, and a qualified nutritionist, and that's the only thing you should be doing, then he probably couldn't pick a worse person to promote veganism via bodybuilding. I would probably scare people with regards to veganism. So we recognize that everyone has strengths in different areas, and that's great. We need that diverse amount of ways of communicating veganism. There are also different factors as well which may dictate how much time we can put in and in what areas. There are some people who are in full-time jobs which might take up 40 to 60 hours of their week, and therefore they may only be able to do certain things while they're at work or at weekends, or it might be that their employers frown upon certain types of activism, even though there's nothing wrong with it. And therefore that might endanger their job, which is the money that they need to eat, to live, things like that. There's also people like myself who are a family person. My priority will always be my family, looking after my children, and I try and fit activism around that. And I found that I can get the more time in doing YouTube because I can do that around my lifestyle. It doesn't take much time out from me going away from my family and going to talks in schools, like I said as well. That's something in the UK, and it takes a few hours out of my day. And then there's some people who are in full-time education who need a lot of time into their studies and, again, may only be able to put in so much time to activism. But that's great. We need people in all of these different areas. My point is that we shouldn't even be focusing on each other in any negative way. We shouldn't get into this vegan versus vegan battles, which sometimes happen online and even in person as well. We're all heading in the same direction. And I understand there are some people who you may think, are they detrimental to veganism? Are they bad for veganism? But I always think, are they doing as much harm as someone who's still consuming animal products? And therefore, all of our energy that we may put into them, could we not put it into inspiring someone to become vegan? Because that's ultimately what we want. That is the end goal. So with that in mind then, what is the best way? What is the best attitude to communicate veganism? I want to start with a quote that James Asper used in his speech. I don't know if it's his quote though. It says, "Speak up for the animals the way you would want to be spoken for if it was you in their situation." And I think that really is spot on. It hits the point exactly how we should think. However, we have to interpret this strategically and cleverly. Because if we went out with all of our impulses, imagine if we were in a cage and we said to someone, "Get me out of here now." Yeah, and we were doing that for someone else. It'd be like running out there, grabbing burgers out of people's mouths, smashing up McDonald's. We'd have a police state overnight. Or if not, we'd have the world vegan overnight if we change it. So we have to think about what is the problem? Animal exploitation. What is the solution? People be vegan, changes the supply and demand change, shuts down the problem. How do we get them there? And what I found is with the attitude in which we communicate, if we are as positive as possible, if we encourage and we empower rather than focusing on the lack. And what I mean by this is something I was guilty of so much. What I would do a lot of the time is there would be someone who was vegetarian. And I would say, "You're only vegetarian, not vegan? You're rubbish." I would leave alone the people who still consumed meat, but I would sometimes attack vegetarians like it wasn't good enough. And all it did was send them away from me. I sent my family away with this sort of attitude. And so then over the last few years, I learnt a change in attitude and what it did. So a lot of the time at festivals and other events, I ended up speaking to a lot of vegetarians. And in every single time I spoke to them, I always asked them one question out of curiosity. And I kept asking them this, and I started doing a survey in my head. So I would always say, "Why did you go vegetarian?" And every single time, every person always said they went vegetarian because they knew that to get meat, an animal had to die, and they didn't want to pay for that. So I was like, "Great. What about dairy and eggs?" And they would say, "Well, that comes out of the animal. It doesn't harm them." So I was like, right. So they're still conditioned, like we all were, but they still made a conscious choice against that. I didn't do that. I needed a video with all of the graphic footage to snap me out of it. Many of us do need that. These are key. If you are passionate about something, it can become inspiring. It doesn't matter what it's about. People like to see drive in other people. I've had family members say, "Why do you care about this so much? What is it? Why are you so driven?" And when they are asking the questions, when they are inspired by you as a positive example, if it's on their terms, it's a lot easier to give them information which they've asked for. So effectively, we can change the vegan stereotype. We can get people to know exactly what we're about. But beyond this, though, I feel as a community, there's different ways that we can work together as well about the information that we share. And I'm going to give you an example. So on the left, you have one news story. Vegan diets for children aren't abusive. Raising a child to eat meat is actually more extreme. Now, we would probably all agree with this. We know both sides of the story. We know what goes into making these foods and what effect it can have on our body. So quite accurate. And the story on the right, an Italian baby raised on a vegan diet is hospitalized for severe malnutrition and removed from parents. Now, this is a true story. However, It comes with an agenda. They don't tell you about the thousands of cases of malnutrition in children where the kids aren't vegan, the parents aren't vegan. They choose the one vegan one that they have. So what tends to happen is an article like this will go out there, and maybe people who are interested in health, children, parenting, medicine, they might share it around. It's their topic of interest. There might be people who don't like vegans who share it to their vegan friends. But what tends to happen is us vegans, we see it and we go, what a load of rubbish. Share. Can't believe this lie. Ping. Someone else sees it. Yeah. Propaganda. Share. And we give this more energy. We give the lie more energy. Well, really, we want to shut that down. We don't want people to know about this. We want them to know the truth. They've had their time, the industries and mainstream media, they've had their time pushing the myths out there. It's our time now. It's our time to spread the truth. We have social media. We have the control of communication to spread the truth about this. As much as that story on the right can frustrate you, the best thing we can do is go in a private forum in a group and say, how can we put something else that shuts this down, this story on the left, or two more? Get that information flowing that all people know about is the truth about veganism, about the health. All of these things that people have been told. Because imagine then, we change the flow of information, we change what is put out there, and then all of a sudden, people start to know different things about veganism, but they don't know how, effectively conditioning them back, brainwashing them back. So people could, imagine they knew stuff like this. Vegans get more than enough protein. I don't know how I know that, don't even know what protein is. The same sort of people who would say, where do you get your protein, could end up saying this. Or vegans eat a plant-based bacon alternative, which is healthier and tastier. Imagine that was the normal information. And plants don't even have a nervous system to process pain. We could effectively get the flow of information, reflecting the truth, and recondition the public. We have that control, we have that power now. I realise, though, I stand up here talking very enthusiastically about this, like it is the solution, and it will work for everyone. I'm not going to lie to you, it won't work for everyone. Everyone is different. However, I believe there is a good 70% of people with that compassionate heart and innate logic to really get this when we fine-tune our message and put it across in a positive way. It doesn't mean shirking on the facts, though. If someone says all in moderation, you let them know what in moderation means to the animals. I think there's maybe a 20% of people who, they probably care a little bit, but not enough to change. They're very apathetic, more consumer themselves. But they're the sort of people that when the world starts going vegan, it becomes popular, they're going to want to be vegan as well. They don't want to be left out. Or it might just be that the whole planet is now thinking about veganism, living veganism. It's almost changed the frequency, the collective consciousness of the planet, and they just tune into that. Effectively, they're the 100 monkeys. Look it up if you want to know what that is. And maybe there's 10% who are, they're not worth it. They're the sort of people who say, I hope animals die, humans die, don't waste time with them. But be careful that these aren't people who are like that because they've been made to feel that way by other vegans. I had family members who started acting like this, but it was because I made them like that, because I really was negative and horrible to them. But let me stress, when I talk about any sort of negative behaviour, I'm not condemning. It would be hypocritical for me to condemn those that condemn. I understand the daily struggle of trying to get your head around what is going on. It's tough. It's very, very tough. The reality of this is extremely hard to deal with. So, of course, it's understandable to feel angry. And it's very, very hard when you are living with friends or family who still consume animal products, dead bodies on the dinner table. And as far as you're concerned, there's no difference between a cat and a dog being there, the sort of animals they would never harm. All I'm saying today is all of that energy, all of that frustration, that anger, can we focus it into something positive? Can we do something with that which will inspire people? Because that's what we want to do. We want to inspire. Because when you really look at the grand scheme of this, that everyone on the planet, 7.5 million people have been conditioned to consume animal products. That is the normal order of things as way as society sees it. And the fact that we, a small percentage, 1 or 2%, have broken away from that, chose to go against that, do what's right, and not only that, tell other people about it, then that makes every single one of you who is vegan absolutely special. I mean that. I 100% mean that. And the reason why I say that is because you've made that choice. Some people are too scared to do it, but you've done it because it's right. However, in having this knowledge, it gives us all a huge responsibility to do it service, to do it justice for the things that we care about, to do the message service for the animals that we care about, for the planet, for our health, every living being on this planet. Because no one else is doing this. No industry is helping out. This is literally down to us, the people around the world who are living this way. We are the ones that are carrying this forward. So all I want to say is that we should go forward together, positively, represent veganism as positively as possible. And then what will happen in time, I believe, is that it will become so popular, it will have so much momentum that the industries will then get on board because it is financially viable for them. And at that point, it will be job done. They'll be initiating regulation to shut down slaughterhouses. They'll be opening up plants, soya plantations, bigger things like that. They'll be transitioning farmers, all because of the work we do. But we have to get the momentum going now. Because as much as we're growing, we don't want people to still tie into the old ways and to the old stereotypes. So it's literally down to us. To round things off, I have a spoken word poem, which I do spoken word poetry to really hit home a message of why I find that doing poetry makes the message get across a lot clearer with emotion. And I wrote this one called The Vegan Community. It's changed names a few times, actually. And it's emphasising the points I've talked about today. And there'll be a video going with it as well. And yeah, I hope you like it. I stand here before you, asking you to come and unite and make veganism a powerful beacon of light. I plead for you all to say, come, unity, and unite as one beautiful community. Community. This feeling of togetherness shouldn't be new to me, but the uncertainty of this is still plaguing some. But we should put that to the side and come together as one. Because a collective of others can be a powerful force, and to mix and to mingle with something we all endorse. And the joy of unity is something that's natural to feel, because being involved together is what we yearn for real. But first, let's take it back to the time when you discovered the gift that is veganism, and the truth was uncovered. So much power in this truth. You of course felt compelled to share, but when you tell your friends and family, they simply don't care. And so you reach out further, and eventually you find another living and breathing vegan whose thinking is aligned. There's a simple and immediate connection. No need to break any ice, as that your united ethical stance already confirms that you're both nice. And the overwhelming excitement that you've realised there are others after you worried you were all alone, but now you've gained a new sister or brother. And you two vegans become more, the foundations of a community are laid, and before you know it, a nice little V-gang has been made. And there is a buzz in the air, as this lifestyle has given you all of the things you couldn't foresee. Acceptance, love, trust, hope, joy, friendship, and a new family. And the beauty is, we're all different, all of unique personalities. We come in all different sizes, shapes, colours, ages, with different backgrounds and nationalities. You realise the barriers that separated you from others were just built up from your fear. But in this community, the barriers don't just go down, but they completely disappear as you have reset yourself to your human nature, and now instinctive intuition is your guide. And although we all wear different war paint, we are all compassionate warriors on the same side. And the great thing is, this is only growing and growing. On the up is the only way that this movement is going. But that is only if we see that all our energy must be focused 100% with positivity. Because negativity and fear are only going to breed an attitude and direction that we really don't need. Because cracks can appear in even the strongest of walls. And if the foundation crumbles, it could all definitely fall. We're a passionate bunch, so of course emotions are going to run high. We all have different ideas that sometimes others will defy. It's because it's important to us. It invokes emotions some of us have never felt before. We all so desperately want change, and so we want to be sure that every other brother and sister is only focused on what we see as a priority. But we need to step back and realise that not one of us is the vegan authority. Because clashing with each other and falling out and causing infighting wars is all pointless when we realise that we are all fighting the same cause. And it can only weaken this community if we break up into different sections, because a movement is a lot less effective if we're moving in different directions. So let's refocus this passion and energy and take veganism higher, and don't let that water of passion you have boil over and put out the fire. Remember what it was that inspired you to choose to be vegan, why you felt it was so important. What was that vital reason? You wanted animals to be free. You wanted the planet to stay alive. You wanted to live healthily and every single one of us to thrive. And remember when you first spoke out, or the first vegan thing that you shared, you had stepped out into the world and you had proudly declared that you want there to be change and you want the truth to be known. So remember, there are others that want the same, and that we should not moan, because being our own worst enemy is what could damage veganism the most. So instead, have understanding and tolerance for every different approach. Extend that recognition of equality to each other. Embrace it, but just resist the temptation to condemn another vegan, especially while meat eating still exists. Instead, we should unite together with love, because that is the most powerful way to go. Because a love-fueled desire to fight injustice will overpower any ego. As together, we make more of a difference with our message being amplified. And with one united voice of compassion, we will not be denied. I mean, just look at the progress that's been made already, and look how much this movement has grown. Only 1% of vegans in the entire world, but yet somehow we make ourselves known. And the world doesn't even know how to deal with us. We are a group like they have never seen, because we bring truth, logic, we destroy all other arguments, and we are stocked full of protein. The only way that we should even be mentioning veganism is in a positive way. Those negative stories against it, don't even give them the time of day. Just see them as a sign that we are doing the industry some damage, and then lying about veganism is the only way that they can manage. Because when we are positive, and we avoid the condemnation of those that aren't even vegan, we ensure positive association, and we destroy the negative and create a new feel-good hype, and we change the public perspective to a positive vegan stereotype, and then veganism being shown in a positive light is all they will ever know, and those militant, extremist, angry stereotypes will ever so slowly go. In fact, most people will see us and have no option but to agree that it's right to be living vegan in this world. So I ask you with love, come and unite. And I hope that there comes a time in our lives where all of us will be seeing a world that doesn't even need community, because we'll just be a collective of humans that are just being. A time when the word vegan doesn't even exist, because not eating animal products will be the norm. And the existence of this peaceful world will be because of the community that we now form. So be conscious of your contribution. Become that example of positivity. Don't give anyone any excuses. Just be that change you want to see. Because most people just see us and think we're just a group obsessed with fruit and veg. And when it comes to changing and saving this planet, we are the leading edge. Thanks, everyone.